Good afternoon. Right, we have a slightly late start, as you probably realise that we are all giving off much too much body heat in here. It's all your fault. As a result, the poor projector up here has just gone crash, and we can't show any pictures. And I tell you, there's some amazing images that Dave has prepared here. Maybe we can find some way of them being shown to you another way another time, I don't know. But unfortunately, this is not the right conditions for that. So we will have a conversation, nevertheless, without pictures. I imagine many of you are aware of David McKean's work and Reinhard Kleist's work. So we don't have to rely on the images, but it's a great shame we haven't been able to get this sorted out. I've just introduced myself. I'm Paul Gravett, and I'm here partly to help sort out some of the UK guests and the exhibitions on here. As you know, Britain is the guest country this year of the Münchn Comic Festival, and there's a whole range of artists here. Throughout the rest of this weekend, there are other talks coming up. One of the ideas was to also present artists to each other and to bring people together. This is what the programmers came up with. This morning we had Percy Simmons meeting Barbara Yellin, and now we have McKean meeting Reinhard Kleist. And there's an interesting connection between these two guys, because I was talking to you, Reinhard, before you may know there's an exhibition of Reinhard Kleist's work as you come into the front of the building. It's just on your left. Around the corner there's an exhibition of his original artwork. And your first sort of breakthrough work was based on H.P. Lovecraft. And you were telling me just now that you were aware at the time in the early 90s of McKean's work, and he had quite an influence on you. Would you like to talk about how you discovered Dave's work and the influence that he had on your own comics?
Actually, Mr. McKean is the reason why I work into comic books, because during my studies as a graphic design student in Münster, I found the Arkham Asylum book in the library, and I was completely fascinated by the way you could tell a story in comic books, and so I started working into that direction, and Mr. McKean was always one of my big ideals, also along with Bill Sienkiewicz and Ken Williams, and so I started working on the book about H.P. Lovecraft, and I was trying to tell the story of H.P. Lovecraft's life in connection with one of his short stories, and also included myself as the comic artist who's trying to do something about Lovecraft's work into that novel. So, yeah.
Were you also aware of Dave McKean's debut work, with Neil Gaiman and Violent Cases? Did you come across that?
Absolutely. I was in different comic book shops. I was trying to collect all the books from Mr. McKean, and I was.
What was it about the work that particularly this group that appealed to you? I know you're here listening to something praise. No. It's the reason why I think they put the two together is that they see a connection between the work. Yeah, it's initially.
Yeah. I was aware of Violent Cases also, and I was collecting the Cages. And I remember that the second part of Cages was not available anywhere, and I was desperately looking for it because I had the idea that I want to have all 10 issues of Cages and only read them when I have all 10 of them. So I had to wait several years until I found the second part somewhere in a bookstore. And then it was one of the nicest reading experience I ever had, reading all 10 of them in a row together with a bottle of wine.
The combination.
I think it was not a very good wine because I was a student at that time, so I couldn't afford a very good wine.
And in terms of the German scene at the time, there was obviously something of a graphic novel scene. We're talking about early 90s now, about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, maybe 20. Well, as in 19?
Yeah. Well,
oh, you're right, of course, 20 years ago, 20 years ago,
oh
yes.
God, it's 20 years ago.
20 years, oh my God. Yes.
Well, the scene in Germany was completely different because there were only a few artists that could live from publishing comic books, and in the last 10 years it totally changed. There's a very new movement and very new, very interesting books now, and a lot of artists from Germany that are now published in other countries, and also myself. Well, when I started, it was very, very difficult for serious comic books to get a wider audience.
I know certainly at that time the term graphic novel hadn't even really been adopted here in Germany. It was a fairly new term and concept, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. It was well, most people just thought that comic books is for children because it has to be funny, because that's in the name, and that changed with the term graphic novel being popular in the language, and so now we have a situation that very serious stuff is having a wider audience, media is reporting about it, so that changed in the last 10 years.
And really for you, Dave, moving into the comics world via, well, your first major work obviously was Reinhard Kleist, which was with Neil Gaiman, your first full-length graphic novel. And I remember when obviously I was involved with that being published. That really was unusual at that time because I think there weren't very many graphic novels that were so-called general fiction at that time. We were still, the term was there, the term of course had been coined by or popularised by Eisner, but essentially it still was dominated by the big 80s character series like Mouse, obviously, particularly, but also Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen as being sort of the models. And I think when Reinhard Kleist came along, one of the things that appealed to me a lot about it was it was very English for a start. It was a very British take on that story. And it was a really new way of doing comics. It was part of that revolution of breaking down the page, escaping from everything having to be necessarily in a strict grid, and basically bringing in all sorts of influences from visual and verbal influence onto the page, which were clearly impressed you and inspired you. Your path to that, when you were working on Reinhard Kleist, were you conscious that you were part of that, of a movement that was beginning, at least, looking to artists like Bill Sienkiewicz, who you were inspired by, and seeing, let me see if I can outdo him, let's see if I can we can all build something to move comics forward. Were you conscious of that, of something happening like that? And if so, what did you want to do? What did you see comics, what had to be done with comics at that point?
It's all so long ago.
It is so long ago. Do you remember? I can't remember.
You can remember a lot better than me. You're doing very well. You should just tell the story.
Well, I'm trying to set the scene.
I can't remember. I don't think so. Because my friends were illustrators and designers working on record covers. And I'd gone to the Society of Strip Illustrators, which was in London, for a few months and met some other people there. But what they were doing really wasn't what I wanted to do.
It was much more commercial.
Well, obviously the people heading towards things like 2000 AD,
yeah,
and strip cartoons, newspapers, things like that.
Yeah.
All perfectly good and valid, but not what I wanted to do.
No.
So no, I didn't really feel like it was a movement. I mean, it felt maybe towards the end of the 80s, 1990, not a movement particularly, but a sort of, particularly Alan Moore's writing was a challenge to up the grade of writing.
Absolutely.
And there had always been some lovely illustrators in comics, a lot of rubbish, but some really lovely illustrators in comics. But very few writers. Can you really name a great writer in comics before Alan Moore?
No, he was the one that used words particularly well.
Yeah. He was a good writer. He would have been a great novelist, he would have been a lovely television writer or film writer had he wanted to do those things, but he wanted to write comics.
Yeah.
So the inspiration was to up the content, the stakes of writing. And then that implied a response from the pictures as well.
Right.
So that's all I remember really.
Yeah. I mean, this is the late 80s when we'd already had Watchmen, as I mentioned, and Vendetta and Warrior magazine, etc. There was obviously a lot developing in UK comics and spreading across to America as well. I think the reception of comics was changing too. We were starting to get coverage in the press, and not just the usual pow zap. Comics are growing up kind of storyline. And in a way, I see this as a kind of pattern that happens in most countries. It's happened here a little bit later, I think, in Germany, hasn't it, than perhaps in Britain. But a similar pattern happened when the graphic novel took off and people recognised that something changed in comics. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, there was like Artstiegel Mouse. It was published, I don't know, in the end of 70s. Yeah.
No, in book form, end of 80s, early 90s.
End of 80s, yeah. And so there was already something but people were saying, oh, this is a comic book, this is also a comic. And also when I was aware of all the artists that I like, Nicolette Christie, for example, I was showing that to people. They were like, oh, this is so interesting, this is such an amazing artwork. I never thought a comic book could do that. And well, that now completely changed, because it's now more open that you find interesting artwork in comic books in the front, in the front shelf of the bookstores. And so there's a big change in how people see comic books now.
Right. And how about in terms of the press and the media? I mean, one of the things that happened at that time as well, Dave, I remember there was quite a bit of sort of TV coverage and sort of cool media coverage about comics, certainly in around the late 80s or so. And I think you and Neil got a bit of that, a bit of sort of celebrity from being published with Violent Kisses and then later on with your work in DC. And this was a moment when I think there was a sort of flirtation by the media to sort of suddenly perhaps started to cover comics, but usually in a fairly shallow way, I think.
Yeah, and these things last a short amount of time.
Yeah, flavour of the month or something.
Then they moved on to typography.
Yeah.
And then they moved on to, whatever the next thing was,
thing.
Molecular Chefs.
Oh, Molecular Chefs.
That was the next bit. You have your little moment in your 15 minutes when they discover a new thing.
Yeah.
The difficulty is sustaining that.
Yeah.
It's not, those 15 minutes and 3 good books will not sustain a medium or a category in a bookshop.
Right.
Or a career.
Yeah, you need
it needs to be ongoing.
to build up. Yeah.
And bizarrely, it's only become sustainable in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
For some reason in the 80s and in the 90s it all kind of fell away as far as
Yeah, it's been called a false dawn, certainly in Britain, but we had always hope that it was going to happen more quickly than it did. And I always feel that if you look back more accurately, what also happened is that a lot of great comics that ought to have crossed over didn't, certainly not in Britain. I mean, things like the Hernandez Brothers' Love and Rockets, or Howard Cruise's Stuck Rubber Baby, for example. These are books that ought to have been equally marketable as Mouse or the other material, but it didn't reach people. And certainly the European material that's been translated. I mean, at the time there was Jerome Sharon's and Luke's Magician's Wife, there was Jose Munoz and Carlos Sampaio's Joyce Barr, all these things that now could cross over perhaps, but back then it was all too different and not pushed with the same zeal. And the main reason why it was a false dawn, I think also, is that it was much easier to basically package Batman and much easier to package Watchmen as more accessible superhero genre material, which is really where Britain has always looked so much more to across the Atlantic to America than it has towards Europe, with exceptions of course, but most of the time that's where we looked for we were almost a sort of an additional state of America in some ways with our affiliation to their comics culture. Yeah. In Germany, probably different though. In Germany, being within the European Union much more, there's been more of a history of European comics being available here. Certainly, all the greats are much better known in this country. I mean, you were aware, I imagine, in the 90s of the new wave coming in from l'Association, for example, obviously work like Persepolis or David B. Did you look to those as other further encouragement for you to make comics your own way?
Well, I looked at all kinds of different all kinds of inspiration, and after my period where I was working into the direction of Sienkiewicz, McKean or Ken Williams. I was looking into different directions. I was also influenced by European artists like Matotti
so I was share that in some of this, they were a bit admiring your work.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, and so I was always trying to look for styles that were appropriate for the stories that I wanted to tell. So I was moving in very many directions, and after a while I found out that I'm more interested in working as also as a writer, because at the beginning I was I had a writer, and I was developing stories together with a writer, and now I work more into the direction where I'm also the artist and the writer. And so I focus my style so that it's more supporting the story.
And for you, David, you were writing your own material even when you were at art college, or were you? Yeah. So you've done some, but your work with Neil obviously is what people know well here, and with Grant Morrison. So Cages was the big leap into doing your own project, your own complete project as a rewriter artist.
In comics. Yeah.
In comics, yeah. And that's, do you see that sort of a very important sort of leap of faith or a step to take to say, I want to be in charge of the whole thing? And just,
yes, and also it was, I realised I would be categorised as a second-rate Bill Sienkiewicz unless I did something about it. So I deliberately put all of that work away and never looked at it again. Because Bill doesn't want a second-rate Bill Sienkiewicz out there, let alone I don't want to be that person. So you have to do that. Sometimes you've got to kill your parents.
So do you actually remember what you did when you decided to turn back on that?
Yes, I looked at all the little mannerisms and tics and stylistic things that I picked up and put them all away. To deliberately challenge myself to look at the real world in a different way.
And were you doing?
And I looked at other people's work and stuff that I didn't like, and tried to find things in there that were interesting. I mean, literally just to shock myself out, because it's so easy if you find something that you really like, just carry on doing that all the time. It's just so easy to do that.
And you certainly had success with what you did. And you could easily have carried on doing that ever since.
Did the most successful comic ever published doing that.
Yes.
So it would be very easy just to carry on doing that. And I know I would have been in a rut and a dead end, and been both creatively dead and miserable.
But in many ways, the commercial market could have easily driven you to that.
Completely.
I mean, I'm sure there are artists who are in that exact position, where they're never able to go, I'm going to throw away all the stuff I thought I knew and start afresh.
Sure.
But
I mean, I just think you have to do that. And so that the people that I know, people that I really admire, we've named Matotti, we've named Ken Williams, they've all been through that. Ken Williams was a Jeffrey Jones character.
Yes.
And he threw that away. Lorenzo Matotti, have you seen his early books? Those very comic-y, cartoony books. You know, he took a good hard look at that and found other artists like Caligari and people that gave him a lot of inspiration. So you just have to kind of do that, really. And when you find, I found a lot of stuff when I was sort of soft and vulnerable in art school, and it all stuck on the surface. But when you get a bit older and actually what your work is about are quite personal things, when you look at another person's work who you like, it sort of goes in to the bloodstream, but it doesn't stick on the surface.
No,
so
right.
You can digest it more easily,
right,
because you have a lot more of your own personality there as the foundation.
Yeah, that's very important. And certainly when you were writing and drawing, but particularly drawing Cages, I mean, it was immediately, you were exposing the drawing very, very strongly, because it was in this tight grid, it was line work, it was a very stark contrast to what we'd seen from you before.
Yeah. Same story, really, trying to tell the story better, trying to do right by the story. And there is something started to feel very wrong to me, spending a day painting one panel that really you should be flowing past, you should be flowing through.
Does that sound familiar to you as well, Ryan? Have you spent a whole day painting a panel?
Well, yes, I did, and redoing it and over redoing it, and until I'm satisfied. And well, I found out for the reading experience, I was after a while I was much more into books that I could read, and I'm into the story, and I'm not looking at it. Oh my God, this is beautiful, and I look at it for 15 minutes, and then I turn the next page, and. This is, I mean, it's a very beautiful experience to look at things, but it's not really supporting the story. Now I'm more into that I want to read a book, and it's like a movie going on, and I spend so much time on a panel so that supports the flow of the story.
Right.
And I'm not. Well, in the beginning with the Lovecraft book, I wanted to convince the audience that I'm a great artist, and so now I'm more into that. I want to let the reader feel what's going on, and be with the characters and identify with the characters. And
so in a way you could say that the Cages, your equivalent to Cages would have been the Johnny Cash biography. Is that right? Was that the first book that you did that really again exposed your drawing very black and white, and it was you're kind of clearing away the painterly approach?
No, there were some books in between.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is the one that really brought your attention, isn't it?
Well, yes, that was kind of my breakthrough.
Yeah.
There were a lot of books that I did before where I was trying out different styles.
Okay.
So
this is probably was it the most pared down, sort of raw, black and white drawing that you used?
No, there was another one before where I was actually trying out the style that I used in the Cash book. There was called The Secrets of Coney Island, and it was 3 or 4 short stories about Coney Island, and I was trying out this this brush style and getting away from the painted artwork, and where I was also trying out the style with the second layer, the grey tone in it. And so there were other books before. There was also one where I was trying a very graphic, very simple black and white style that was called, I'm sorry to say that, Fact. And there was another one that was called America. I was much more influenced by Matotti, and it was something like a diary about my time when I was in New York. And so I was trying out several things until I came to the Cash book, where I was I'm still satisfied with the way it transports the story.
Right. And your solo work, David, beyond Cages, you continue to do a lot of short stories, which have been again very diverse in approach. And you don't see yourself necessarily. One comics I know is the medium you return to, and that you feel perhaps the most in control, and perhaps the most free to work within. You have done many other things, many other forms of art. How have your comics been affected by all that experience in other media? Does every other medium feed into what you do, and in what ways?
They all talk to each other. And if I've been taking a lot of photographs or working on a film and working with actors, that's a really good example. If I've been working with actors for a while, just it's such an extraordinary thing that they do. They've taught me so much. You can't help but bring that back to the drawings again. And if you've got a little sequence to do in a comic, and you imagine these people walking around and how they might own those characters and express those words in their own way, and find their own way through the scene. But it's already changing the way you might draw those characters. So that's taught me a lot. And vice versa, the way that I lay out my stories has affected the way I frame shots in a film and take photographs. They all bleed into each other.
And when you were seen in a film called Luna, which won a British Film Festival award. Do you do a lot of drawing for that? Is there a lot of almost comics or graphic?
No. made 3 films, and the first one I storyboarded almost every frame of it, a ludicrous amount of storyboards, because there was a lot of animation in it, and I needed to show the actors where they would be. They were in big blue space, doing, you know, green screen and stuff. So they
lots of CGI.
CGI stuff. So I could point at, you're standing next to this big CGI chicken, and you're on a staircase, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And they could get the gist of where they were. So I thought I was helping, but there was one actress in particular who this completely drove crazy, because she didn't want to be a puppet, you know, she didn't want to be just a clothes horse on a puppet. I'm putting her there and say, look that way, and there's the chicken. You know, she hated all that, so she wanted to be able to find her own way through a scene. And we didn't have arguments about it, but we butted heads a little bit. But I realised I really was not helping her at all, and I was alienated.
Quite a common, possibly for a comic artist to come to filmmaking. It must be quite a common thing, because you're used to being almost playing controlling your characters completely.
But it really was in the spirit of trying to help them, and I wasn't trying to get in their hair. And to be honest, you know, another couple of the actors liked that. They appreciated knowing what they would look like. But there was something about this one actress and the way she explained why she was not happy that really stuck with me. So that made me think I was not getting the best out of her and the best out of this collaboration, because film is a pure collaboration. So for Luna, I didn't storyboard anything. In fact, I barely planned anything. I knew, obviously I wrote it, so I knew in my head roughly how I wanted the scenes read and what the characters were thinking, as well as what they were saying.
It's actually a film script, it's all words.
It's a script, it's a pure script, no choice. And then, so we just turn up every morning in the set, which was a house, a real house, and we just find our own way through it. And they had a much better time, and they felt they were co-authoring it properly, because they were really discovering the characters and the way the scenes developed entirely. And improvisation came out of it, and lovely little extra things that I had not thought of. So that was proper, I think, proper collaboration, in which you get, for some of the parts, is much greater than any one of us could have done.
Did it make you change the way you make comics, having done acting? I mean, in terms of, is there more room for improvisation from you now?
Yes, always.
For accidents?
All of these things have been.
So you felt that there's less necessity to be sort of perfectionist or completely in control before you even start?
Yes, and in fact, my other film, third film, and the one I'm making at the moment, I'm completely not in control. The third film is called Gospel of Us, and I just turned up to shoot whatever happened. So I didn't write it. It was a sort of story. It's a film with Michael Sheen, and he plays a sort of Christ-like character returning to a Welsh village to save the town. And it was happening whether I was there or not. And I just went along with a bunch of cameramen to shoot it. And it was totally out of control. And then 20,000 people came along to see this happen. So it was chaos. But extraordinary adrenaline-filled chaos. And then I got all this footage back and spent a year carving a film out of it.
So how many hours did you have of footage from this?
Days of footage. Days of footage.
Because it was over literally Easter weekend.
It was over 3 days, and he stayed in character for 3 days. And
it was essentially a passion play.
It was a passion play.
Performed in Port Talbot.
That's right, that's right. And so I had 10 cameras that I'd set up. So that's 10 times 3 days. But then I realised I've got 20,000 and 10, because every single person that came has got an iPhone out, or an iPad, or a mobile phone, or you know, all kinds of cameras. So I put a notice out on Twitter saying, if any of you were there and fancy donating footage, send it to me. And a bunch of people did, so I had even more footage.
Do all those people, if their work appeared in the film, do they get
They've all got credit.
Great. So everyone, possibly the film with the most collaborative, at least cameraman.
Yeah. Well, I certainly got 20,000. I mean, in the end, about 50 people sent me.
Yeah.
So
that's no wonder it took you a year to make it.
So it took a year to sort of carve it down.
Yeah.
But everything else pretty much I'd done up to then. I really had been 90 to 100% control of it. My hands completely around it. But the feeling of being completely out of control control and having to react and respond to things. And these golden moments would happen. Nobody would write that. But they happened. And capturing it was fantastic. So I've done a similar thing again. I have written this one. And it's a little more controlled, but there's an awful lot of chaos in there again. So it's a lovely feeling being out of control.
Do you think maybe film makes it more possible to be out of control with film than it is with comics?
With low budget film, As soon as you spend over a certain amount of money, they want complete control. And if you spend 200 million, you're not going to let anything get out of control.
No.
And those are not the kind of films I'm interested in trying to make. Not that I would ever get the chance.
No.
I'm interested in small budget films that allow that kind of play, because it's actually the process that I'm in love with. It's barely the end result. I mean, The Gospel of Us has got some bits in it that I absolutely love. It's got some bits in it that barely make sense, it's barely cohesive. But I don't really care. The process was a one-off. I don't know anything else like it. And I learned so much from it. That's what I'm doing this for. It's to learn and to be right there in this process.
Yeah.
It's not to come out with some perfect, carved, smooth object that is a perfect thing. It's boring.
Well, your sort of process. How planned are your books, your graphic novels? Do you allow room for accident or for improvisation? Do you have to change things as the story takes over its own life as you make these books?
Sure. I'm very much impressed by people that can work in a team or that can react to improvisation or things that are just happening. I'm very impressed. Well, I tried to work for a movie one time. It was a disaster, and I was almost sure that I'm not a really good team worker. So
what was the film?
And what was your role in it?
Yeah.
I was the art director for animation sequences, and
what was the film?
The film was called Münchn, Kinder, and don't see it. And
so you have a credit on the film, do you?
Yeah. But I'm not showing it to anybody.
And there were animated segments you were storyboarding or designing?
I was storyboarding, I was designing, I was doing the backgrounds for the animation sequences in that film, and I wanted to have it look very rough and very simple because we didn't have very much money. And but the producers of the movie, they said, well, we want to have Star Wars. And so in the end, what came out was a complete compromise and a horrible computer animation, and it just looked disastrous. So I had the feeling I'm never gonna work for a movie again, because I'm absolutely not able to push my ideas so much that the other people would listen. So I concentrated on comic books because I have complete control on what you see here. And so yeah, that's the way I work. And well, there is something happening in that process where I'm also changing things on the script. When I write the script, it's not the final version. There's still something going on when I work on the drawings. So there's a lot of improvisation. But it's something that I'm doing with myself and not with other people. I would love to do that, but I'm afraid I'm not able to do that, because I would be a control freak and flip out if somebody says something, and maybe later on I realize that it's actually better than my own idea, but then it's too late.
In terms of your material, I mean, Dave with Cages was writing something completely from his own imagination, whereas you tended to focus on biographies or strong, true life stories, going from Johnny Cash to Fidel Castro, and then going to the boxer, the story of a survivor of the Holocaust who became a famous American boxer. And now the new book, which is, I haven't only just seen the copy of it just now, which most people, just tell you a little about this one, which is your latest book, isn't it? But I guess before you do just describe it to me, my question actually is, do you ever imagine yourself going back to ever doing something that is not based on someone else's existing history or biography? Would you want to say, okay, I'm just going to leap into something that is rather like Cage's, if you like, something where I don't know quite, it's written, but it's my own story. It's your own.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And in those books, I was always when the stories found me. I didn't look for the stories. The stories found me just by accident. I came across the story of Herzberhaft and also the story of Samir Yusuf Omar, and so I wanted to work on those stories. And but I also would love to write my own story, because I have a lot of stories in my head that I want to do, that I would love to put into a comic book. But I have to say that, well, yes, there were other projects coming in, like those stories where I found out, well, that those are such a good stories. I could not even think about such a good setup for the story myself. So I worked on these ones, and and also the new book that's coming out will also be a biography about a musician. But on this project, I wanted to go a little bit further away from the facts and just telling the facts, and do more like an improvisation about the work.
Is it known what you're?
Yeah, that's the Nick Cave.
Okay, the Nick Cave project. Yes, you're doing a biography of Cave, but presumably Nick is on hand and is giving you feedback to having his life turned into a graphic novel. How has it been working with Nick Cave on the new one?
Well, actually, we talked about that, and he's a huge comic book fan, and he liked the idea about making a biography comic book about his life, but he also said that he's not able to give very much input in it, so we talked about it, and I'm sending him stuff, and he always answers me sometimes within half an hour, and so he's really into it, but he's mostly saying, "Oh, it's lovely, I like it."
Did you see the 20,000 hours documentary? What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's one of the greatest biography movies about a musician, because it's so not something. We have people interviewed and they say, "Oh, he's a great guy, he's doing this and that." But it's completely different, and he's building his own legend in that movie, and it's also actually a very, very funny movie if you look at it. And I like the scenes where he's actually portrayed as somebody who has paranoid conversations while driving in his car.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Have you seen the film?
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah. Is that something that makes it slightly hard act for you to follow, having had that documentary film come out? Are people almost bound to compare what you do with 20,000 hours? Do you feel like you've got to do something different from the film, or avoid duplicating it in some way?
No, I had something like an idea before that I'm still following, but it's very ambitious, and I'm still in the process of writing it, but it will be different than the movie, actually.
I'm just connecting the two a little bit, because you've done John Cage?
Cale,
forgive me, Cale, I always get this muddled up. John Cale, and also you worked with Heston Blumenthal, the chef. Musician. But not musician, I'm just thinking about the biographical, working on biographies of people with, in some cases, with the person on hand.
Yes, no doubt. No, he was well and truly on there.
Yes, exactly.
He's wonderful. I don't know if you know. Do you know Heston Blumenthal? Yeah. I don't know if he's.
He must have a German name, isn't it?
Well, he's yes, but I don't know if he's done any television programs. He's very, very well known in England and Australia, but I don't know how much he's done in Germany. But he's, probably the most well-known chef in the world in a way, But an extraordinary man. He's completely engaged with everything. If you meet him and say you're a plumber, he'll sit you down and want to know everything about plumbing, the history of plumbing, how it works, the tools that you use, everything. He just is completely one of those completely engaged.
I'm just making the connection, because then he would use all this plumbing advice to interpret it into cookery, wouldn't he?
Absolutely.
He'd be using sink plungers and
everything will end up on a plate of food somewhere, like a plumber's salad. And also he just very funny and self-deprecating, and but an absolute perfectionist. in every little detail.
So was he very precious about the book you were making about him? About his...
He was very precious, but he's like all the good people I know. When he trusts you and he knows that you're not going to make him look stupid, he'll leave you alone. They hire you because they like what you do and respect what you do. So yes, factual things he wants to make sure we're right, and he has a very good aesthetic sense. So that was on show. But he trusts me to get on with it. So he's a wonderful collaborator.
How about Cale? Did you collaborate with Cale?
Yeah, very much, and we've done other things together. He narrated one of my films, and I did another book with him. So we continue to do things together. And again, he's one of these people that you talk to occasionally who's about 7 subjects ahead of you. So he looks kind of vacant and sort of looks off a lot.
Very good catch up.
Waiting to catch up. You know he's got about seven subjects ahead of you. And it all comes back in a circle eventually. So he's an interesting character.
And how about, in terms of music, you've done Cash and you've done Cale. How do you interpret? Do you try to interpret the music, evoke the music graphically in what you draw? Has that been one of the goals of what you've done?
It's certainly a goal. I work with a lot of musicians. I play music, and it comes up a lot. I do record covers and things like that, and love to try and find a musical element to express. But it is hard. It's music, for God's sake. So it is difficult, but there are ways to try and do it, and just going through the rather pedantic biographical details of a musician that I probably wouldn't be so interested in. But I mean, I don't know why I think of this, but I just saw Mr. Turner, a film called Mr. Turner, about it's about Turner, isn't it? Yes, about Turner. Actually, really disappointed because it looks exquisite. Absolutely looks beautiful. It's a beautiful photograph, and it's a very good turn as the actor Timothy Spall,
yes,
playing it. But I didn't learn anything about Turner. In fact, almost the opposite. You can learn so much more about Turner by looking at 3 square inches of one of his paintings than every one of the minutes of that extremely long film. I just learned nothing about it. It was a bunch of stuff that happened to a man in a room, as far as I can tell. It really said nothing about where the light came from, where the brush marks came from. He painted in a bit of a silly way for the camera. That had nothing to do with Turner, as far as I can tell. So it was a strange film. There have been other films about painters and artists that I think expressed something of their train of thought. It's the train of thought, really. Yeah. If you want to know about the music, listen to the music. But if you want to have an insight into the train of thought that guided the music, that can be expressed.
Is that what you're going to try and express with Cale, in your book? Will you try and will you try and convey the train of thought?
I made it
behind it, the spirit of the music.
Yeah, I made it easy for myself because I was picking musicians that are always telling stories in their songs. Johnny Cash was a very, very good storyteller in his songs, and he also used his music to tell the stories. And so in that book I have the story of his life, and then I have illustrations of some of his songs in it. And I'm also trying to do something like that with the biography about Nick Cave, because he's also a very good storyteller in his song, but he's working in a very different way. He's not really telling stories, well, here's the beginning, here's the end, and then what comes out. And in most of his songs he's more metaphorical and more lyrical, and so the songs doesn't really have a story in the traditional sense, so it leaves me a lot of room for my own interpretation of what he's actually singing about. And so I can make my own versions. I can make my cover versions of his songs in the book, and that's what I find very interesting right now about working on that project. And I want also to play more than I did with the Johnny Cash book. It was it was much more based on a lot of facts, and so I want to free myself from that a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think that's also what he was thinking when he said that it's okay for me to do the book about him. And I think he also wanted to have more free version about his life than a story that is just based on facts.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, quite a few of your comments. I know the Boxer, at least, or maybe this new one. They've been serialised in the newspaper, haven't they? Which is isn't that right? They were in the newspapers. So you might be aware of that. Obviously, it is reaching a big audience, and it's a great way to get your work out to people without having to pay for it in that sense. And then this new book is where you almost had to become a sort of almost a journalist. You were telling me when you were exploring trying to find your full story of this. Perhaps you could just tell people who may not know what this story is about, what you had to do to make this new book.
Actually, it was also published in the same newspaper. And well, the story is about this young girl from Somalia. She competed in the Olympic Games in 2008 in Beijing. And she was the very, very, very last to finish the 200-meter sprint. But she was so much into the Olympic spirit that she wanted to compete again in 2012 in London. And so she tried everything to do that, and she was not able to train properly in her country. And so she made the migration route through Sudan, Libya, and unfortunately she died on her way when she tried to cross the Mediterranean Sea by a small boat. And well, it was very, very difficult to work on that story because there's not very much known about what happened to her on her trip, which was almost a year long. And so I had to do some journalistic work to find out what happened or what could have happened on the trip. And that was very, very difficult. And
what things did you have to do? Did you visit? How did you make contact with her family, presumably?
Yeah, I visited her sister. She lives in Helsinki, and I also had conversations with other migrants that made the same route, and they were telling me things about, for example, the scene where she's kidnapped, and well, they told me a lot of details about how those kidnapping, which is happening quite often on that trip, how that works, and how do the relatives pay how do you say that, the money for the kidnapping to free the people, and ransom, and so all those details I had to do research, and I had to find out what could have happened on that trip. I tried to be as close to what could have happened as possible, but at some points I had to fill in the holes in the story. And it was very difficult and very hard also because you come along a lot of very, very frustrating stories. And so right now I said, well, for the next book I want to do something completely different, and I don't want to do something depressing and dark again, so that's why I choose the cave. And
It's not depressing at all, is it? Not at all. And I just wonder, Dave, I'm not sure, have you done anything, or did it interest you to do anything with this kind of journalistic or sort of investigative reportage approach to comics? Have you done, can you imagine a subject that might have...
Apart from that short story,
the one you did.
Journalist.
Right.
Which is, I suppose.
It is in a way, isn't it? Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So yes,
you have done that.
yes. Yeah. One short story, terrifying story.
Yes.
No, I'd love to.
The right subject came along, yes.
Yeah, right subject.
We've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to open up the floor to some questions. If you'd like to put your hand up and ask a question of Dave McKean or Reinhard Kleist. Anyone have a question? No. Yes, do you want a question? Speak up.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What do you prefer from your own work, Mr. McKean? What's your favorite comic that you made?
What do I prefer of my own work? And I think you can guess the answer. It's old, you know. I mean, I change, and so it's very hard to look back at that stuff and really feel happy about it. Cages I'm very happy with, really, because it was my baby and I learnt a lot doing it, and it taught me how to write, and it taught me a lot of things. And it was very personal at the time, and it's about things that are important to me, belief and why we believe in things or don't believe in things, what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's about creativity, it's about finding love in a harsh world. So yeah, I'm still very happy with Cages.
Thank you. Okay. I have a question just here, please. Yeah. In Deutsch is okay. Maybe you can translate for us. Oh, in English, can you?
Yeah.
Please.
I wonder whether you think that people read the story differently when it's a graphic novel, for example, the Olympia or the Boxer, compared to if it's mere prose, if you've got only the story like in a newspaper, and if you think that they read it differently, in what way?
Well, yes, sure. I think it's a big difference. Well, the first thing is that well, in the newspaper you read you do just the facts, and well, in your head you're well, at least I did when I read the first article about Samia Yusuf Omar. It struck me so much that I was almost crying. I was reading the facts, but I also interpreted them as a story, so that touched me so much that I was crying. And well, that's what a comic book can do. It can well, you can read it, you identify with the person, and you really are with the person, and you want her to survive, or you want her to fulfill her dream, and so that's what a comic book can do. And I think in the case of the Olympia book, it's well, I was not thinking about that when I started working on it, but I think what the book like this can do is give a face, something. But we hear all those horrible stories on the news, and we just see numbers. There are thousands of people dying on their way, and we don't have really a face, or we don't have a story. And so what it could do is to give one of those at least one of those numbers a face, so that you start thinking differently about it. Well, it cannot save any life or change something in the politics, but maybe some people are thinking differently when they hear all those numbers in the news.
Very good. Okay, last question. Anyone? Okay, one here, we go.
Question to McKean. I would like to know what is your current view on Arkham Asylum, not the story, not that. No, nothing about that. Would you still do it if you would been asked to do it? Because I mean, basically, it's your most successful work, and I can imagine that you kind of fed up.
Most financially successful,
yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you judge success. Really.
Successful, yes.
I've certainly done many other things that I feel are much more successful in other ways. They, in almost any way you'd like to say, they're things that reach more people, things that personally I've obviously felt have been more rewarding and that I've learned more from, all that sort of stuff. So it was successful in its little bubble in one way. At the time I was fantastically excited to do it, and I certainly wasn't excited to draw Batman, but I was really excited to meet Grant and talk with Grant, because he was not what I was expecting at all. He's engaged with the world. He was, at a time, he was very much like, we met each other at similar points in our careers, where we both started doing something but desperately wanted to push out into doing something else. He discovered Dennis Potter, and I discovered Jan Schwankmeyer, and we just changed names for a lunch. So we completely, rewrote it in many ways. Robin was in it, got rid of that, and we made it a symbolic story. It's not a man in a costume, it's a symbolic story. So there were lots of things I was really excited about, had great fun doing it. I had a lovely year drawing it, really enjoyed doing it. And then got to the end and thought, well, you know, we put a huge amount of effort into this, and there's layers and layers of stuff in Grant's script, and visual references to this, that, and the other. But basically, under that, there is the foundation is a superhero, and I just thought that's just far too weak a foundation to pile all this stuff on. And I lost faith with the heavily painted comics. We talked a bit about that already. So I kind of decided I'd gone down that road probably as far as I wanted to go, and as far as a big company like DC Comics would let me go. And that's fine. So, you know, I learned stuff from it, but you pick up your bag of tricks and move elsewhere.
So some kind of positive connection to it, because I can imagine you still feel hunted by, I don't know.
It's completely pointless and foolish regretting anything. Everything is useful to a degree. I got an awful lot out of it, and I certainly don't regret it. Obviously, I don't only. I mean, you know, if you go to a signing here, and every single book is a copy of Arkham, by the 55th copy, you go, I've done other books here. I've done one or two other books. It would be lovely to see another book. But the signing here was fantastic. You know, I've signed Arkham, but lots of other things. I've signed stuff here I've never seen before, and stuff I've never signed before. So that was, you know, that's lovely. In its place, it's fine.
But I think for many people,
but it's 30 years.
It is, yeah. But for many people, it is such a kind of people whenever because it's new to somebody all the time.
Then, of course.
And it's their gateway into what you do, actually the kind of comics they've never experienced, which is so different.
So that's why you can't regret it.
No, you can't.
You know, it was hugely bad.
And hopefully, of course, as you're finding, people follow you as an auteur, as a creator, and then discover how much more you're doing.
Well, that's certainly what I hoped at the time, that they printed so many copies of that thing. Surely a few of them are going to come with me and play somewhere else. And some have, so that's great. You know. Again, you can't regret it.
No. Hopefully there are more people who read Arkham Asylum and then said, I must follow Dave McKean, as opposed to, I must follow Batman.
Well, that's never going to happen. I'd be fooling myself. I'm living in a mirror world, if I honestly thought that.
Yes.
I know that the vast majority of people bought the book because it's Batman.
Yes.
Or because it's got that many funny pictures in it. But a small group of people are going to come with me and play in maybe more challenging, more strange, I know other things. And some may like those things, and some may not. And some people get on the bus, people leave the bus. It's fun.
It's not so different really from Reinhardt's books, where if you're a Johnny Cash fan, you obviously would buy his Cash book, but maybe you might just, some of those readers might just go, maybe Castor will be interesting too, even though I'm not locked into Johnny Cash.
That's what you've done.
You have to hope that you realise that your author's worth following. Yeah. I urge you to do that. Both of these authors here, McKean and Kleist, are well worth your attention. And please follow what they're doing, what they've done. And thank you very much for joining us over this hour. Thank you, Dave McKean and Reinhard Kleist. Thank you.